Hi, I'm J. Lenora Bressler, and welcome to the February 27th, 2018 edition of the Bible, Delight in the Details. One of the things I think that you learn through time, through experience, and certainly when you become a parent, is that a lot of times you can be a really good parent. You can try to raise your children correctly, so to speak. You can try to imbue them with a great love of the Lord and the things of God. And sometimes it takes, and sometimes it just doesn't. And I think it's very important that we understand that. It can be very depressing, I know, to a lot of people whose children have gone astray, so to speak, from the ways of God and just general respect and general good behavior. But one of the things that is fascinating to me is that the Bible makes it very clear that it is not always your fault if you are a parent. You see good kids come from good parents. You see bad kids come from good parents. You see good kids coming from bad parents. You see every possible machination and concoction and connection about this. It is absolutely fascinating. I mean, even with Adam and Eve, isn't it fascinating? You have two sons. In the very first generation, you have trouble within a family. I know that when I was growing up, I had a tendency, as did many people around me, to think, well, if there's trouble in your family, that means that you're obviously not right with God, and you ought to be able to get it all straight, and there's a problem here, and somebody's at fault, and da 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 da. And as time goes by, I am more and more sympathetic, empathetic, and understanding about that. Everybody is responsible for themselves. Everybody is going to make their own decisions. And that includes spouses, that includes children, that includes in-laws, that includes, whoever it is that is within your sphere of influence. And the Bible is very, very clear about that. Now, yes, we have obligations. For example, we are to bring up our children in the ways of the Lord. And we do that duty. But we are responsible for the effort, and God is responsible for the results. And we have to remember God is ultimately in control of that, not us. No matter how well-intentioned we are and how sincere we are, we cannot make decisions for other people. And that includes members of our own dearly loved families. And I see so many of my friends struggling with this, and I want to tell them, you do your best and you leave the rest to the Lord. Now, that also does not mean, however, that we should not do our duties with regard to our parental obligations. And this brings up 2 Samuel chapter 15. This is in the aftermath of David's great sin about Bathsheba and the murder of Uriah. He has acknowledged his sin. He's asked for forgiveness. But as you remember, God said, the sword will not depart from your house. This will be the consequence of your sin. Not necessarily the punishment of it, but just the natural consequences that will come from it. One of the things that happened, I believe, there is that the children lost respect for their father, if they had any to begin with. But more than that, it wasn't just because of the sin. That probably could have been rectified. Those relationships could have been healed. The problem is that it appears that even though he acknowledged his sin, David, for whatever reason, did not engage well as a father. He was distant, apparently. And what do we see? We see his eldest son, Amnon, in chapter 15, believing he could actually go so far as to rape his half-sister and not worry about the consequences that his father, the king, would bring about. Indeed, David did not bring about consequences. This led to the anger of another son, Absalom, who dearly loved his sister and who actually brought her into his house where she was completely desolate. She was ruined in her own mind, and he did the best he could by her. But this seemed to be kind of the nail in the coffin of the bad relationship between Absalom and David. And ultimately, that would fester to the point that Absalom would rebel and bring a civil war and try to depose David in the worst possible disrespectful ways. Why was this permitted? Why did David allow this situation? And one of the things I would call to your attention is this. Sometimes sin in our lives makes us feel like hypocrites when we warn and counsel other people about that. But actually, don't view it like that. Don't make the mistake that it appears perhaps David made. He did not feel he had the high moral ground to intervene and to discipline and teach and guide his children. So he was almost an absentee father. Actually, think of it this way. You and me who understand the consequences, we are probably the best ever people to guide, to counsel our children and those of whom we have influence. So be sure that you never allow past mistakes, even past sins, to keep you from feeling that you have the moral ground to speak to an issue. Actually, you have the strongest ground. And when it comes to our children, we certainly have an obligation to speak. I'm J. Lenora Bressler. Visit me on the next edition of the Bible to lighten the details. Have a great day.